£1,000 for home improvements. I was living in my mum's box room, so I thought it was a bit odd that it was a home improvement loan. And I just said to myself, surely there's a way to lend money to people where they can talk to somebody that actually understands flying. So that was how ATPL Finance came around. Then I became a multi-engine IR commercial instructor for Air Atlantique, which is actually command pilot training. That's where I worked, and that's where I became the course manager for the cadet scheme at West Atlantic that was spoken about earlier. And that's how I snuck under the radar into West Atlantic. Then I got my first job in an airliner, which is the ATP. They're all freighters now. There's a couple of passenger ones left in Sweden, but most of them are this. And I love this photo because this is me on my base jet, where you do 6 circuits for the first time. I would not want to be that aircraft. It wasn't pretty, the first one. And this is the aircraft we got engaged in, so it's one of my favourite photos. And there's me. And well, there was a first officer. Now I've just become a senior first officer at West Atlantic. And next year I'm going on to fly for a national airline here in the UK early next year. So that was my journey. As you can see, I didn't have a huge loan, but I did have to go out and earn a fair amount of money and do it bit by bit. And that took me, let me think, about 3 years to train and then 2.5 years to get that first airline job. So that was a 5-year journey. So it's not what I'm about to talk to you now with integrated funding. It was not done at that speed, purely because I couldn't fund it at that speed. So, the integrated training route. This is just my impression of how an integrated course works. Roughly, timescale 14 to 18 months, probably more close to 18 months. And there's usually an entry test, because not all the integrated courses, but at some of the larger schools, they're linked to an airline, or they're linked to a holding pool that an airline might recruit from, which is why there's an entry test to try and ensure that there'll be a positive outcome from the training. Oh, thank you. There's a blank in the audience. And that costs between 70 to 125. Now 125 would be the most expensive course and the most expensive type rating available. The 70,000 probably wouldn't be associated with an airline scheme. The £93,000 plus courses tend to get you into a holding pool for an airline. Doesn't always include the type rating. Some of them that you see, you might have heard of MPL training, that does include the type rating for the airline normally, because you'll be trained on that airline specific standard operating procedures and their type rating from quite early on in the training. However, if you're not associated with a particular airline, your type rating on top of that course, this is what people forget sometimes, you've got the course price of say 93,000, you've then got to add this onto it at the end. So it's important that if you have got the means to do this integrated route, you look beyond the initial course. You need to look at the total package, because every airline pilot will tell you, without the type rating, you're not going to get a job, no matter how good you were through your basic training, because you have to get skilled up on their aircraft. Now, payments are normally due at the beginning, maybe a deposit, sometime in advance, and then you'll probably have an instalment that's due a month before you start, and that will continue for about the first year of the course, maybe even the first 9 months. So, 9 months in, you've paid for most of the course. So, just be comfortable with the school's financial situation, however you wish to do that, but what I'm sort of politely saying is there's no need to pay them completely up front. If they're offering a payment schedule, then I would definitely utilise it. So, integrated funding ideas. Now, because of the cost of this course, it does remove those unsecured loans that I used, in my opinion, because I've not seen unsecured loans for 100,000 anymore. That would be great though, but you just don't see them. So, really, the options are to sell something, to borrow against a security, so a secured loan, and that might be you speak to your current mortgage provider if you've got one, or maybe it would be that you look at second charge loan providers to put a second security on the property behind the mortgage, and that might be a second way to raise the funds. One thing I've just noted here is that if you're going to do that, release some money from a property and then go and pay that to a school somewhere else, so we weren't looking at a UK school, as we've seen recently, you do need to be really careful with the exchange rate. Try and pay in sterling if you can to the schools. Most of the big UK schools will bill you in sterling anyway, even though they might do some of the training abroad. So basically what I'm saying is, if you can't raise circa £100,000 in a period of about 10 months, then the chances of you doing an integrated course are slim, basically. That was my situation. You know, let's be honest, the marketing at these big schools is impressive, and when you're sort of 17, 18, desperate to be a pilot, it definitely makes you want to go there. So I was a bit disappointed that when I realised I wasn't going to be going there, but I had to move on. I'm sorry this seems a bit blunt, but I deal with lots of people every week, and I'm getting a little bit disappointed that some people think it's integrated or nothing, which really isn't the case. I will concede that the integrated route is fantastic, and I wish I could have done it, if I'm honest, but there are other ways to do it. So I'd really like you to keep positive and not be too downhearted if you realise that you can't go to an integrated course. So, then, if you still want to be a pilot, you might think, okay, I've heard about this modular route, I'm going to have a look into that. Now that is normally, don't do it over 8 years, but I'm just going to give you an example on the next slide. But 40 months, you could really get it done quickly, just at the same speed as you could integrate it. It'd be a different style of training slightly, I won't go into it, but it's a slightly different course structure, and you could come out in that period. As you know, I took 3 years over it from start to finish, but again, if you had more funds available, you could do it a lot quicker. Not normally an entry test. However, I am starting to see that some are trying to as they're building up bigger schemes. But in general, you're a customer, just like you'd go to a flying club maybe to do a flying course. They'll generally accept you, and then it might be a bit later into the training that you'd find out if you had any difficulties. But normally, there's no entry test. Again, not normally any airline affiliation. There are a couple out there though, they'll be around the show and I'm sure they'll tell you about it pretty quickly because it's a unique selling point for them. But generally, you do your course and then you're on your own to go and find a job. And this costs between about 45 to 60, depending on you and the school. I say depending on you because if you need additional training, then you're going to have to pay for it. There's not normally any training guarantees added into the course, or any sort of protection that some of the integrated schools might be talking to you about. I haven't seen one that includes a type rating. Maybe never's a bit strong, but I haven't seen it. So again, start thinking I've got to pay for the course, and then I've got to find my type rating funds. Pay as you fly, and as I said before, be very careful paying up front. Now I don't mind saying that in front of the whole industry there, because there is no reason, if the business has got enough cash flow and it's doing well, that you should be upfronting the whole thing in one go if they're offering a payment schedule. Really, that currency comment I said is probably more to do with this slide, to be honest, because you might go and do your PPL in the UK, your CPL in Florida. I mean, I'm hearing people training all over the world at the moment. If you do that, just remember about that exchange rate and find a company that you trust to do that exchange rate to get the money out to that country. And then you're on your own. There are schemes that you can apply for once you're qualified. Some of the bigger schools that might have tried to ask you to do the integrated route might have schemes themselves that you're eligible to go to. So it's well worth asking them if you feel that you're going to be doing the modular route. Now, if you spread this out, you see that 14 months to 8 years, the longer you spread this out, from my experience as an instructor up to commercial level, it's going to cost you more. Because currency and consistency is everything in flying. And the longer you drag this course out, you're going to be repeating stuff and it will cost you more money. So, funding ideas. Now, it's a double-edged sword with this one because you have got more flexibility because the amounts you're looking for are smaller. So as you saw with me, I was able to pick when I was doing the loans and I was able to pay them off, ask for a top-up. So you've got that flexibility because you're dealing with a much smaller amount of money. As far as I'm aware, and I might be wrong, but the largest unsecured loans I've seen have been circa 25,000, I believe. So it's a good chunk of the course cost. But what I tried to do was just save that loan to the very end, as you saw with my story. I took it as late as I could. The downside to this though, those secured loans that I spoke about earlier for the integrated route, if they're industry specific, and there's a couple of them, they have some sort of a holiday period. You won't get that in the open market, but in flying there's a holiday period. I haven't seen an unsecured loan with any sort of reasonable holiday period. So you've got to be thinking, well, like I did, I didn't quit my job to do my training. I kept it running at the same time, which meant that I did a course part-time, I took 2 or 3 weeks annual leave and I finished it off, and that's where the loan came in. So that covers people that can get access to funding for the integrated or have the money themselves. Again, come and buy me a drink. And it covers people who can do the modular route and maybe will be able to borrow, but we haven't really covered people that feel they can't do any of those. So as I go through the presentation, I'll start to touch on that now. So the clock is ticking. 18 months to complete your PPL exams. That's when you first do your private pilot's licence. There's 9 theory exams. You've got 18 months to do those. After that, from your last exam, you've got 24 months to do the actual licence, the private pilot's licence. Then you've got 18 months to complete your ATPL exams from when you do your first one. You can't do your ATPL exams until you've done your private pilot's licence. And then after your last ATPL exam, you've got 3 years to get your CPL IR. This obviously isn't a factor with integrated, because with integrated you're in and out of the door in a year and a half. So that adds up to me to be circa 8 years, but you would never ever want to do it. But what I'm saying is, if you hit any hurdles along this road, you have got time to consolidate, maybe do some saving, pay off any loans that you've had, and then top them back up again. That does give you the flexibility to do it. Now, this is the golden gem, sponsorship schemes. So I was here earlier with West Atlantic Cadet Scheme. They're here today. Go and speak to them about that. It does require you have a private pilot's licence. They cover the rest, and then you pay it back once you're working with them. You don't pay all of it back. I think it's half. Check that with the cadets. Now, this hasn't been announced again yet. You'll maybe Martin will correct me later, but I haven't seen the British Airways Future Pilot Programme yet. But they do run one, and there is some scheme there that helps people get onto that, so ask them about that, but I do know they haven't announced anything just yet. The Virgin Atlantic MPL scheme, I'm really proud to be a part of. Some of you may have seen a bit of a marketing campaign we did, but basically we have set up a system with Virgin whereby Virgin can act as the guarantor for the course. So if you apply to the MPL scheme and you say to them in your interview, we need funding, I need help, sorry, it's not guaranteed, but if they do choose you, you'll end up speaking to me because we're behind that. And I'm really proud of that, because what it means is no matter what background you're from, as long as you've got the ability, you've got an opportunity to fly for Virgin Atlantic. And I'm really going to try and push the industry in the next year, some of the big carriers, to come and replicate what I've done with Virgin, because it really does work for everybody. If you want more details about that, ask me afterwards. Flybe did a partially sponsored scheme. I need to check with Flybe today whether they're still running that. There's an EasyJet MPL scheme, again through a bank. I believe they will offer a certain number of people some assistance with the course cost. Again, it'll probably be a case that you're paying it back, but they're at least helping you gain access to the funding. Wizz Air do one, I don't know too much about it, but if you want to write it down and go and research it. Qatar Airways, they have an MPL programme. I'm not sure of the funding with them again, but I was told that there's something available. And the Honourable Company of Air Pilots. Now, I got told that they sometimes struggle to actually give money away, which I can't believe, but if it is true, go and speak to them and find out, because if there's some sort of a bursary there or some sort of sponsorship, and it's well worth doing. So that's there's maybe more out there, and again, some of these, they may have been withdrawn for this year and they might not launch till next year, but if you're definitely looking for sponsorship, feel free to jot that down and take it away with you and go and research them. So, no family support, which, again, that 8,000 that my mum gave me was a lot of money to her, but without being so ungrateful, out in the scheme of the 60,000, it doesn't get you to where you need to be. So if you're in this room now and you think, I've got nobody that's going to assist me, I'll just tell you a few tips that I did. So get the best paid job you can. It sounds easier said than done, but up until, well, probably till next year, I haven't been able to earn in flying what I was earning during my training. So it is amazing what you can go out and achieve when you've got that fire in your belly to go and fund your training. Focus completely on the task. Now what I mean by that is when I did my private pilot's licence, I was 17, I was working in a call centre, which I really didn't enjoy. But with my salary which was low, in my head that was 5 or 6 flying lessons. and that is just how I operate with everything. I went to buy something, it was a quarter of a flying lesson, it was half a flying lesson. I've invented my own currency, which was flying lessons. And you really, if you're going to make this happen and you're on your own, you've got to be so disciplined and resilient. But the great thing for you if you're in this situation is some of the core skills that these airlines want are disciplined and resilient individuals, because they tend to make good flight crew. Every penny you spend after normal living costs goes on flying. You don't get to do anything else. There's no girlfriends, there's no social life. It's just you and an aircraft. And but as I say, you'll probably have a lot to talk about your interviews, because a lot of the airline interviews are competency based. So you'll be able to talk about all your different stories. And modular might be the route for you because of that flexibility that we spoke about. So keep positive. It's really important because you are going to have some down moments on this journey, because it's a tough journey. However, when you look back on it, as I do now, I don't regret any of it, because it was a fantastic adventure. But I will say at the time, you're seeing everybody else walk straight into an airline job and it's quite upsetting. But it is a fantastic journey and you should enjoy it. So, if there's anybody a bit older in the room, this lady works for Thomas Cook. No, she doesn't really. But, but are you ever too old is a question that I hear quite a lot, because some people come into flying a bit later in life and they're really in quite an interesting position because they've got the flexibility to maybe release funds from their own home, maybe have a good credit profile, maybe a good salary. So there is a way of them doing this training. But things to consider. What do you want to achieve and where do you want to work are the two key ones, because certain airlines, West Atlantic, who I work for, would love to have somebody that's already had a career come in, fly all those Boeing aircraft and stay with them, because they don't want you to leave, because attrition costs them. So that is an airline that would want somebody slightly older. People do get initial flying jobs in their 40s. Is it the norm? No, but that might not be because of their age. It just is, in general, people try and get into this when they're a bit younger. So that, I wouldn't say it's discriminatory in any way. You'll probably have a better chance of raising the funds, and the negative is though, will you have commitments that stand in the way? Kids, cars, houses, etc. So it might be a bit of a bigger sacrifice. But it's definitely doable, and I'm not saying every airline takes people on their 40s, but there are airlines out there that I've spoken to that would appreciate that candidate. See what I'm doing for time, my love of my own voice. So, credit score. It's the most important thing if you want to be a pilot, if you're funding your training yourself. Forget your skills, it is going to be about your credit score, because you're not going to get funds in the UK without a good score. Go home tonight and get a free report. It's a quick Google search. Immediately research how to improve your score and look after it. You want to be over here, away from the nutty professor and over at good and great. Especially if you're going to go for those bigger unsecured loans. There are other criteria that you have to meet, but it's not going to happen at all without the credit score. So, whatever you do get a PPL, and I must qualify this statement, if you are going to go to an integrated course, you might only want to do a trial lesson or something just to see if you like flying, because they're going to train you from scratch. However, if you feel that you can't do the modular route at the minute, you can't do integrated, just get on the road with that PPL, because it's a big chunk of the journey. It's a fantastic course, it's your introduction to flying, it's the best one I ever did. It helps you decide if it's for you or not. Some cadet schemes require you to have one, the West Atlantic one. It does look good on your CV to your current employer anyway, or future employers. It's amazing who you can meet at a local flying school. Some of the best contacts I've made at a flying club. It's amazing how many airline pilots go and hang around at flying clubs at the weekend. And you get to take your friends for lunch in France that make them pay. So I've done this a couple of times now, so I really appreciate you coming to listen to me. I'm sorry it's not too precise, but it's such a broad topic. I'm going to go and wait outside, and if you've got any questions, if not, I'll be back on the West Atlantic stand. And I really hope that all of you pursue this and get away.